I'm in what used to be known as the Dingle, but since this estate of apartments has been built, the postcode has been changed. This isn't Liverpool 8 anymore, this is Liverpool 3. This is Riverside Drive and we're looking south along the River Mersey. This is now part of the Trans-Pennine Trail. I thought I would tell the story of Liverpool Docks, and I think it's going to be over a few videos. I don't think I'm going to fit it all into one. But apart from telling the story of the docks, I also wanted to follow the route of the Overhead Railway, and this is where the railway would have started from the southern end. So it's pretty cold today. It was -2 overnight. I think it's warmed up a little. It's not unusual weather for March, but people are trying to make out that it is. But we've had snow in March plenty of times before. But it's the wind. There's nothing like wind to ruin a soundtrack on a video. So if there's wind on the video you're watching, my apologies. This video then is going to be about two subjects: the Herculaneum Dock and Liverpool's long lost Overhead Railway. And to do this, we're going to start the story further down the road, nearer to the city centre. As you can see, we are on the border of Toxteth, and in the distance there is Liverpool city centre. This is Sefton Street. It's the same road that we started the video on, and further along it becomes Riverside Drive. We're running basically along the banks of the River Mersey, heading south. And today, Sefton Street is a road of small businesses and one or two car dealerships. This one is called Arnold Clark. But back in time, the Overhead Railway would have run along Sefton Street as it made its way from the Herculaneum Dock heading north. Now, one or two people have told me that these steps here are part of the Overhead Railway. You would have climbed these steps to catch the train, which is obviously elevated. It's above street level. So let's take a walk up the steps and see what's at the top. Doesn't seem that many people use these steps these days, but if this was a way of reaching the Overhead Railway as a stop on its journey, which I have no reason to doubt, then at one time this would have been very busy indeed. There's a great deal of wear on some of the steps here. Well, not a great deal to see up here, but it does look like it's been used for a stop on the journey of the Overhead Railway. I'm not quite sure if this was the original terminus. Anyway, let's see what this plaque says. When the Overhead Railway was built, the terminus would have been on this road. So let's start with a brief history of Liverpool's Overhead Railway. The Liverpool Overhead Railway, which was known locally as the Dockers Umbrella or the OV, was an overhead railway in Liverpool which operated along Liverpool Docks. It opened in 1893 with lightweight electric multiple units. The railway had a number of world firsts. It was the first electric elevated railway, the first to use automatic signalling and electric colour light signals. It was also the first to use electric multiple units and was home to one of the first passenger escalators at a railway station. So not only did Liverpool have a world first with Crown Street being the first railway between two cities, Liverpool also had a world first with its electric overhead railway. Originally, the railway spanned 5 miles. It ran from the Herculaneum Dock here in the south to the Alexandra Dock in the north. The railway was extended at both ends over the years, and as far south as Dingle, and in the north it reached Seaforth and Litherland. The southern extension from the Herculaneum Dock to the Dingle is something that we're going to give some attention to in this video. A number of stations opened and closed during the railway's operation, owing to relative popularity and damage, including air bombing during World War II. At its peak, almost 20 million people used the railway every year. Being a local railway, it was not nationalised in 1948. When the overhead railway was first built, it was built primarily as a means of getting dockers to the dock that they worked on. But anyone could travel on the overhead railway. Even children, there was children's tickets sold. So basically it was just a method for people to get from one end of the city to the other, and no matter what you worked in, you didn't have to be a docker. The overhead railway would have come in very handy if you lived in the Dingle, say, and worked at the other end of town or off into Litherland. So the Herculaneum Dock railway station was the original southern terminus for the Liverpool Overhead Railway, and it was actually adjacent to the Harrington Dock. The Herculaneum railway station was named after the Herculaneum Dock, and this is what remains of the dock today. And you can see above these low-level entrances to storage units, there's a tunnel, and above the tunnel there are houses. That's actually Grafton Street, and we're going to take a look at the reason why this tunnel was built. These individual ground level units were originally built to house oil. That's what the ships were bringing into the Herculaneum Dock at the time. So let's have a look at what the Herculaneum Dock used to look like. The Herculaneum Dock was named after the Herculaneum Pottery Company, which had occupied the site previously. The Pottery Company occupied the site between 1794 and 1841. In 1864, a new dock was designed by George Fosbury Lister, and it was blasted from the foreshore, providing 2 graving docks. This dock opened in 1866, and 10 years later a 3rd graving dock was added. Beginning in 1873, the dock handled petroleum. In 1878, these specialist casements were built to store this and other volatile cargo within the sandstone cliffs above. The dock continued in this capacity until the task of oil handling was transferred across the river to the Tranmere Oil Terminal and Stanlow Oil Refinery. This is what those casements look like today. From the early days when they were just cave-like structures bored into the sandstone wall, at some point they've received built-in fascias with lockable metal doors. For some reason, at this end of the old dock, these casements are inaccessible. They've got these railings around them. I'm not quite sure why, whether they're unsafe, but further down these look even worse, but you can actually just walk up to these and walk along and have a good look. 1 or 2 are actually open. We'll come back and have a look at the tunnel a little later, but for now I'm just going to take a walk along the base of the cliff here and have a look at the rest of the encasements. Now further down here there's another gate which stops access to walking any further, and I guess that's the beginning of the new housing estate that's been built. I presume that these encasements are all empty. There's 1 or 2 here which have had their doors removed. This one and the one next door. This one's definitely empty. There's nothing in there, nothing worth seeing. It's just a hole in the sandstone wall, as is this one. But I'm told that this is a favourite place for ladies of the night to bring their clients. It must be a nice secluded place. I didn't think people still did that kind of thing. I just thought they did it online these days. You live and learn. Let's explain the reason for the tunnel. Nobody actually lived at this level back in the days when this was a dock, but many of the dockers lived in the Dingle, which is on a level above where we saw those streets. That's where the Dingle housing is, and it was inconvenient for them to have to come all the way down here to catch a train. This then is an extension of the southern end of the Liverpool Overhead Railway. It moved the terminus from this ground level to a station which was built on Park Road in the Dingle. This is Park Road in the Dingle, and this is the Gaumont Cinema, which opened in 1937 and closed as a cinema in 1966. It did become a bingo hall, and it closed its doors on that in 1998, and it's been disused ever since. But in front of us there is Park Road, and we're going to take a walk to where the station was built, Dingle Station for the Overhead Railway. And Dingle Station was quite unusual because it was the only underground station on an elevated railway. You actually bought your ticket at ground level, but you had to descend to the platforms which were below ground. This was done to level the railway out. We've seen how high that cliff face is. So let's have a look at a couple of photos of the old Dingle Station. This one is taken from the opposite direction. This is from where we've just walked. You can see the Gaumont Cinema on the corner there, and this tall building is the station. The station building is 3 stories high with ticket sales on the ground floor and offices above. The station opened on the 21st of December 1896 and it closed on the 30th of December 1956. That's the day when the whole of the overhead railway system came to an end. Now this photograph was taken showing the station in the direction that we're walking. So let's have a look at what the station looks like today. Judging by the photograph and looking at Park Road today, it's very, very different. A lot of the buildings that once resided on this road are no longer here. But we're coming up to this corner and this is where the station would have been. The car care centre is basically a hand car wash. For many years this was the home of a car repair centre called Roscoe Engineering. But on the 24th of July 2012, part of the tunnel collapsed. A number of homes above this section of the tunnel had to be evacuated. In October 2013, work commenced on the repair of the tunnel, and the residents were allowed back into their homes in February 2014. But that basically was the end of Roscoe Engineering. I don't know as a company in general, but certainly at this site, and there's many cars still lying abandoned in the disused tunnel. Once you bought your ticket here though, you would travel along the railway line through the tunnel, and there was a steel bridge which brought you out of the tunnel and onto the railway itself. So let's have a look at what this area used to look like back then. So this photograph shows the steel bridge which was constructed between the overhead railway and the tunnel entrance or exit, depending on which way you were going, and Grafton Street above and the encasements below. So back to today, and this is where Sefton Street becomes Riverside Drive. On the right hand side there is Hatfield's Jaguar dealership, and the high rise is on Columbus Quay. Now if you want to live in one of those flats in that high rise, it will cost you around about £530,000. It's £500,000. Now on the left is Hatfield's Land Rover and Range Rover, and behind that is this new development, and these were built on the Herculaneum Dock. Anyway, we're going to continue along Riverside Drive and have a better look at these. And here comes the Liverpool tour bus with its open top. I can't imagine anyone sitting up there today. No, top deck's empty. Right, so let's have a look at where we would be if we were here in the time of the docks. So this photograph shows the location of the steel bridge there coming out of the tunnel and joining the overhead railway. And as we've walked along Riverside Drive, we've gone a little bit further into what would have been the old docks. In fact, right now we would be right here. This photograph was taken in 1910, and in the red circle is the Herculaneum graving docks. And this is where we are now, and this is where they've built these apartments, City Quay. A one-bedroom apartment here can set you back £145,000. Or you could rent one for £800 a month. The site was bought in 2004 by David McLean Homes. I think they're a national company, and this development opened in 2008. It looks very nice if you like apartments and you like living on the edge of the waterfront, then this is the place to be. Personally, I prefer a front and back garden, but that's just me, I guess. But this whole estate is behind gates, and without knowing the number you can't enter. It's basically there to keep the riffraff out, so I think the riffraff will have a quick look and retrace riffraff steps. Right, so turning my back on the gates, I'm going to head back to Riverside Drive and take a left turn here at the top. And not much further along, we can have a look at the old Herculaneum Steps. So that's our next stop. You can see this footpath here leads to this pathway, and I'm going to have a look at the old Dockers Steps. So on our left here, these railings, on the other side is Ellerman Drive, which is where we've just walked to the anti-riffraff gates. Now we would be walking on part of the Herculaneum Dock here, and that closed in 1972, and during the 1980s it was all filled in. This dock was blasted from the foreshore, and it provided 2 graving docks. They opened in 1866, and in 1876 a 3rd graving dock was added. A graving dock isn't a dock where old ships go to die. It's a dock where repairs are made to ships' hulls, and also where ships' hulls are repainted. Now in front of me is the Herculaneum Steps, also known as the Dockers Steps and the Dingle Steps. But so many names just for one rather steep set of steps. Now there's a sign on the wall which says that you can only use these steps during daylight hours, and I think these hooks on the wall here were part of a gate which probably stopped people walking down here. Okay, so let's go up the steps. It's a little bit slippy. Halfway up the steps, and we get a chance to have a better look at City Quay. Now that water feature is on the site of that 3rd graving dock I mentioned earlier. Anyway, onwards and upwards up the 2nd flight of steps. I think from ground level to this level here, and possibly beyond when we get to Grafton Street, is around about 100 foot. Feels like it as well, every step. Now any dockers who worked at the Herculaneum Dock and lived in the Dingle would have taken this route to work and to home every day. Now hopefully along here I can get a better view of the casemates that line the wall under Grafton Street, maybe by looking over the railings here or through them. Just need to get a decent break in the trees. I think you can see them through the railings as I walk along. I'm just trying to find somewhere where the trees aren't so thick. Yeah, so there's the casemates. I think there's 63 remaining. I'm not quite sure how many there were originally, but that's the best view we're going to get from up here, I think. Anyway, off to Grafton Street. Out of breath now. Anyway, as I said earlier, I think Grafton Street is around about 100 feet above the ground level below where City Quay is and where the Herculaneum Dock is. And I believe that the residents here, when City Quay was being built, objected to some of the high-rise buildings which were planned because they have a fine view across the Mersey, and on a clear day you can see into Wales and see the Welsh hills. Today we're lucky if we can see the other side of the river. Collectively, these streets are known as the Bread Streets. If you remember the SitCom comedy series which was on TV back in the 1980s called Bread, well, Bread was filmed here. There were 7 series. I was quite shocked to find out there was that many, and it ran from the 1st of May 1986 to the 3rd of November 1991. Now this is Elswick Street, and this is where the series was filmed, at least the exterior shots anyway. So Bread the series was written by Carla Lane, whose real name is Romana Barrack, and she wrote quite a few situation comedies for television. She wrote The Liver Birds and Butterflies. Carla Lane is no longer with us. She passed away in May 2016. I think one thing that the new housing estates on the level below us, where the docks were, have changed the demographic in this area because they're all occupied by young professionals, and they say the same thing is happening here as well. There are doctors, nurses and professional people living in these streets as well, and they all look very well looked after. Okay, so let's have a look down the road and have a look at this view across the River Mersey. Just a couple of things I would like to recap on. This bridge, which was shown earlier in the video, is a bridge over a ground level railway. As well as the overhead railway, there was also a ground level railway, and I think that was moving goods around the edge of the docks. So these locomotives would have run under the steel bridge which connected the extension tunnel to the overhead railway. You can see the tracks on this old black and white photograph. Next, the tunnel itself, and you can see that it's got the Liverpool Overhead Railway Southern Extension engraved above the tunnel and the date that it was completed. But what you might not see is below the plaque and just above those lighter stones, the names of each engineer who worked on the tunnel are also engraved. It's quite clear on the original photograph, but I think by the time YouTube crunched the image, you won't be able to see it. At the bottom of the Herculaneum Steps, there was a mural that I walked past, and I didn't really dwell on it, but the mural was created by Alan Murray, and the theme is Liverpool history and culture then and now. The painting shows people arriving in Liverpool looking for work. It goes on to show prosperity and poverty, the overhead railway, shipbuilding, the Second World War, Toxteth riots, the dockers' strikes, and a selection of Liverpool characters, famous and not so famous. In this video I've dwelt upon the history of the Herculaneum Dock, but there were other docks in this location. In order from south to north, first of all there was Harrington Dock. The next one along was Toxteth Dock. Brunswick Dock. And the South Ferry Basin. Now there are others as we head north, and we'll cover those in another video. But I'll just leave you with this old black and white photograph of the overhead railway, because all through the video I didn't actually show what it looked like. Always leave the best to last. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch up soon.